All right, we are live on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Hi, everyone. Greetings, greetings, greetings. So good to see you all here. Arriving for our conversation. Please, as you join in, say hello to me and let me know from where in the world you're joining in for this conversation. So today we're going to be exploring the theme of spiritual healing for generational trauma or generational curses. And yeah, this is one of my absolute favorite topics and themes to explore under the sun. Just anything to do with energetics, with genetics, anything to do with energetics within our generational lineages. So please do hang out with me, and yeah, let's explore this conversation and this theme together. Yeah. Awesome. So for those who see me for the first time, we've been getting a lot of people joining us here in this community. My name is Dimelo Moreri and I am a spiritual healer with a specific focus. My area of specialization is womb healing and womb medicine. And this is why you would have seen a lot of conversation relating to matters of women wellness, relating to the womb, relating to that area around the sacral chakra, also relating to the body, relating to intimacy, etc., which falls under a broader theme of womb medicine. Yeah. And so I also offer work in psycho-spiritual healing, right? So if you look at my bio, you'll see that in the space we are delving into matters of psycho-spiritual healing and womb medicine, right? And so today, we're going to be talking generational trauma and just really having a conversation, about some of what you might need to know, right, to be able to also study and map these things for yourself in your own individual capacity, right? Awesome. And also, lastly, some of you might know that we were having this teaching series in this month of August. So this is the fourth class, right, in that teaching series, which I was hosting in August. And this is the completion class, given that August is coming to an end. However, I think that there'll be two more live classes that I'll need to do with y'all. There are two other things that I want to share with you. So please look out for that, like in the first and second week of September. So, this being the fourth class, it means that we've had 3 classes thus far. The first one explored spiritual healing for an abortion or a miscarriage. The second one explored the theme of spiritual healing for women struggling to conceive. And the third one last week, we explored spiritual healing for sexual trauma, right? And so I'm also sharing like these with you. One, to really offer like a psycho-spiritual education. It's really things that we need to know, things that I'd love to share with you and that I thought would be great to share with you. All right. And also, if you look at like each specific theme of this class, this also relates to work that I actually do offer in my healing offers, right? So I do work with women who might, need healing after an abortion or a miscarriage. And I'm actually, building, a program there that I'll offer these women, right? Which will be more than just one session, right? And I also offer healing work for women who might be struggling to conceive, and who want to start the spiritual healing work, to clear any trauma or any inner wounding, you know, that might be standing in the way for conception. Yeah, actually, the program that I'm building is for this. Is called Conception Medicine Program, right, for women, yeah, who are struggling to conceive and who want to dive into the work, you know, the spiritual healing work, yes, around that. And I also like offer healing work for women and men, right, who might have a history of sexual trauma, you know. And so, yeah, this you can either, you know, work with me in a once-off session or in a more longer-term setting. So, yeah, if it feels like something you want to explore, you know, drop me a DM or just go to the bio in my link. There are tabs there for my once-off session, 2-hour healing session, and for my 6 months private healing program as well. Currently, it's just those two. And I'll be adding the conception medicine program, right? Which I'm so excited about. Yeah. Okay. As you're joining in, please say hi to me and let me know where in the world you're joining in. Yeah. So let's dive into today's theme. We're having a conversation, a chat on generational trauma, generational curses, and yeah, just the spiritual healing work that you can tap into to heal, you know, those patterns, to heal that trauma, to heal what we sometimes call curses, right? So there's a reason why, you know, I wrote it as generational trauma / curses, right? So oftentimes what we refer to as generational curses, you know, oftentimes a trauma that is held within the lineage, right? A trauma or a pain or an inner wounding that is held within the lineage, you know, that might have traveled or traversed from one generation to another, all right? And so now also when we're speaking of trauma, right, we're talking about the imprint of the past or of time, right, on a lineage, right? So you could imagine a lineage as almost like a lettuce, right? Like a template. You can imagine that there's a template of this lineage and that there is a lettuce of this lineage, right? So upon this lettuce, you will find that there will be various imprints, right, of the past and of time, right? Such that as events take place across time, they will have an impact on the inner infrastructure of this lattice or of this template, which is your lineage, right? And so specifically with trauma, we're looking at events which are wounding for the lattice of this trauma. We're also looking at events, experiences, which might result in a pain, right? For the lattice, for the template of this lineage, right? And so when these events take place, right, they will leave an imprint on this lattice, on the inner infrastructure of this lattice or of this template, right? Yeah. So usually when we're considering trauma, we're often thinking of like big events, right? Trauma can also be like very small events, right? Where maybe in your own life, right? It could be in the event where maybe you went to a shop or to the mall or to, I don't know, a circus, just a big event where there are a lot of people, and your mom disappears from your side for like 5 seconds, and in those 5 seconds you're feeling all alone, you're feeling lost, right? And like completely abandoned, right? And she comes back after those 2 seconds, right? After those 10 seconds. But the memory or that 10 seconds can have such a huge imprint, you know, on your inner being, on your psyche, right? Of having been abandoned, of having been alone, right? So when we're talking of generational trauma, right, we're focusing specifically on the events that would have been encountered by your ancestors, right? By members of generations before your own, right? That would have now become locked within the DNA of the lineage, and that would have an impact on you right now as you're living, as you're building your life, right? Yeah. Yeah, like just the key as a point of departure, right? I just want to say each one of us, everybody showing up for this class and everybody who's going to, watch it as a replay, right? We kind of like hold responsibility for ourselves to study and to map our own lineages, right? For those who will ever, step into a healing session with me, even in my once-off healing session, right? Like part of what we will do, we'll just lay down a map for your first 3 generations, right? So looking at you, looking at your parents, and then looking at your great-grandparents, right? So you also want to take this as homework, right? Everybody listening to this, right? Either right now or after the session, please just go get a piece of paper and you're going to write your full names. You're going to write the full names of your parents, and you're going to write the full names of your grandparents on both sides, right? You can also take it to the 4th generation, right? By writing the names of all your great grandparents, right? So which means at the top there will be you, and then there will be 2 of your parents, and then there will be 4 of your grandparents, and then there will be 8 of your great grandparents, right? But we can just leave it at grandparents, right? And so with this, just having those 3 lineages, right, you can begin to see the patterns within your lineage, right? And so now, often we use the word generational and ancestral interchangeably. Is it interchangeably? Yes. They're synonyms, essentially, right? And we also want to work a lot around your parents, because your parents are your first ancestors, right? So when we're talking ancestors, we're talking about people from whom you flow, right? Either living or not living, right? And the reason why we will always want to sit with and map out the patterns of either your living ancestors or your departed ancestors is because whether they are alive or whether they are departed, their memory still lives within you, right? You still carry their DNA, such that whatever patterns they held or whatever patterns they manifested in their own lives can have an impact on you. The patterns that they held, the patterns that they experienced, right? The experiences that they had could have traveled down into your DNA and could be animating in your life, right? So ancestral healing work 101, you just want to have that, get those 3 generations, right? Put them on paper, and we're going to start working with those, right? And so this is some of what we can begin to tell when we're just looking at those 3 generations, right? You're like generation 1, your parents is generation 2, your grandparents is generation 3, right? So this is what we'll be able to tell. We will be able to tell the genetics within the mother line, right? So just by looking at your mother and just by looking at your grandmothers, right, we will be able to begin to see patterns that are active within the maternal lineage, right? Represented by your mother, represented by your grandmothers, right? And we only need to look at the experiences of these women, right? What were their lives like, right? How did they experience life on earth, right? Were they married? What was the experience of intimacy? What was the experience of money? Did they have children, right? Did they have beautiful romantic relationships with their partners, right? Were they fruitful in their endeavors, right? Were they loved, or were they greatly burdened, or were they alone, or were they lonely, etc., right? So especially if you are a woman, right, we want to look at this, right? Especially to see, you know, the gifts and the traumas that you might have inherited from your mother and from your mother's womb, you know, by having been in her womb, right? And also by looking at the mother line, you know, we begin to see if there might be patterns of a sisterhood wound, right? So for some of our ancestors, you know, our grandmothers got married into polygamy, right? So if there has been maybe a betrayal wound, or you know, that polygamy, betrayal by sisters, other sisters, you know, you might find that there might be very active within the mother wound, within the mother line, what we call a sisterhood wound, right? Where maybe you might find yourself really struggling to find or to form friendships with other women, where you might be finding it very difficult to trust other women, right? So we want to just look at it, you know, what have been the experiences of your grandmothers, you know? So oftentimes, just by looking at this map, we're able to map you and to see, you know, some of what might inform what's happening in your life, right? Yeah, let me know if any of this resonates, yeah? And what we can also tell by just looking at this 3-generational map is the energetics within the father line, right? What is active for the men within the lineage, right? Where their fathers present, were they present within the lives of their own children, right? Did they have wives? Did they experience love? Did they experience joy? Were they supported? Did they have a close relationship with their fathers, right? And this is quite similar to the mothers as well, right? Within the mother lineage, we also want to see, did this woman feel mothered by her own mother? You know, did this man feel fathered? Did he have father figures, you know? And how might this impact you as a man or as a woman, right? And what we also want to look at, you know, and like this is really, I've seen it as a very, and it's not just me, you guys will also agree with me that we have as a huge pandemic in our world, you know, the experience of absent fathers, right? Like it's something that is active in a lot of lineages, right? We have more mothers than fathers being present in their children's lives, right? And what's been like very interesting for me to see as I've been like working with more and more clients, you know, is just to see the impact of what this has in a real and in a lived experience way, right? And so we want to see, you know, like, part of what we also want to ask when we're looking at a lineage is, were your mom and dad together? Were they married, right? If they were not married, or even if they were married, what was their relationship like, right? And how has this impacted you, right? And this pertains, or this relates to matters of intimacy, right? Because as children, while we're still young, right, we learn intimacy by witnessing our parents, right? So whatever ways in which your mom and dad would have interacted. Your mom and dad, remember, they're your first ancestors, they're your first line of ancestors, right? And so whatever patterns of intimacy they had, have a direct impact on how you will likely experience intimacy in your life, right? And when we go like to the generational level, to the third one, right, we'll begin to see why your mother might have experienced intimacy in the ways that she did, and why your father would have also experienced or expressed intimacy in the ways that he did, just by looking at their own parents, what their own experiences were like, how they moved in the world, how they related with each other. All right. And, and if you do know like the fourth generational level, who would be your great grandparents, right, would also be able to see the links that inform who your grandparents have become, right? If you have any questions, just throw them in the comment section, or if anything feels like, oh my God, let me know if it like resonates for you. All right. So like there's just so much that we can tell, or that we can be able to learn by just looking at the three lineages, the three generations of your lineage, right? We can begin to tell. We can begin to deduce, why your intimacy looks in the ways that it does, right? Why you experience money in the ways that you do, right? Why you experience business or your career in the ways that you do. I'm going to get into that now, right? So we had been talking about, the phenomenon of absent fathers, right? So in the majority, we find that more fathers or more mothers are present than fathers, right? And so, like the presence of a mother or a father, speaks to or directly informs our relationship with the masculine and the feminine respectively. Let's focus on the father first, right? So the relationship that you have with your father, right, whether he's present or whether he's absent, informs your relationship with the masculine energies of the world, right, in energy form or in human form. So the masculine energy in human form will be men, right? Yeah. And so if as a child, right, maybe you have had a wounded relationship with the masculine, either as a result of strained relationships with your own father, or pain or wounding that, was sustained within this relationship, this will have an impact on how you relate with the masculine, right? In the form of men, and with masculine energetics as well. So masculine energetics include matters of money, matters of the quality of your relationship, right? Matters of your career, matters of your business, right? So usually where there is a father wound, right? So a father wound, we're specifically talking about pain relating to your relationship with your father, or pain sustained in your relationship with your father, right? And often the reason why it falls under generational trauma is that often the ways in which your father relates with you might be informed by the ways in which he related with his own father, and his own father, right? So we'll find that pain within the father line, it can be something that moves from one generation to the next, right? Until, as we often say about generational curses, until someone within the lineage decides to do something about it, right? So if you find yourself sitting with a father wound, right? And a father wound is not just specific to men, right? Even we as girls have, father wounds, right? So when you find yourself as somebody who has sustained a father wound, you might just be the one. Like if you're listening to this, this might just be your invitation, that this might just be your calling. You know, your soul saying, hello. It might be your divine assignment to do the necessary healing work to heal your father wound such that it ends with you for your lineage. All right? Yeah. So we can just begin to start to tell a story about your career, your business, your finances, the quality of your relationships by looking at what's happening with your father and what's happening within the father line, right? And with regards to the feminine and the mother line, right? So the feminine governs matters of fertility, right? And matters of relationships. So the feminine will decide whether there is a relationship, and the masculine will decide the quality of that relationship, right? And often, like, it doesn't just start with this second generation of your mom and dad. It often goes back generations, right? And there might be a reason for that. Say if, for example, there is a generational pattern of women or of men not getting married, which is a generational trauma, which can be considered a generational curse, you know, where somebody says, oh my God, we in our family, we are cursed, and we don't get to experience love, or we don't get married, right? So we want to sit down. You can literally take a pen, put it on paper, you know, and begin to study the patterns within your lineage and of different generations, right? Please let me know if you have any questions, right? And so often, like I said, often what we term generational curses are a trauma held within the lineage, right? I'll give an example with, because intimacy is such a big, it's a big part of my work and something I'm so passionate about. I'll give an example relating to intimacy and to marriage, right? So say for example, you notice a pattern, all right? And patterns are usually, sometimes they can seem subtle. Sometimes they might not be like immediately apparent to you, right? So if you're a woman, you can just go look at the women in your lineage, all right? Look at you, look at your mother, look at your aunts, look at your grandmothers, right? As a man, look at your father, look at your uncles, bomalome le borangwane, right? And look at your grandfathers, right? What is common amongst these people, right? Or you can move like with different themes, right? What's been the experience of intimacy? What's been the experience of money, right? Etc. And you'll begin to see the patterns, right? So say for example, we are focusing on the theme of intimacy or of marriage, right? What we might sometimes consider as a curse might be a trauma. Say, for example, a grandmother 3 generations ago found herself in a deeply hurtful relationship, maybe filled with abuse and, violence, right? And she might have vowed, maybe in a moment of great pain, she might have said out loud or to herself, never again will I or my children experience, or will I or my children be with a man? Because of the pain and that hurt, she would have associated marriage or intimacy with violence, with abuse, etc. Right? And so just the statement such as that one, her being in a moment of pain and saying the statement that is so deeply charged with emotion, right? That can become an imprint for the lineage, right? That is deeply held within her cellular memory, that is deeply held within her DNA, right? And that can be, transferred from one generation to the next, right? Usually that's how some of our generational trauma begins, right? Some generational trauma, can be as a result of traumatic experiences we have had, right? Maybe maybe sexual trauma or violence within intimate relationships, right? Which can result in a stagnant energy within the lineage, right? That just moves from one generation to the next, and that animates as these experiences in our lives, right? Okay. Let's imagine it once more, right? So say at some point there is a grandmother or a grandfather who finds herself having experiences of sexual trauma or of violence or of abuse in her life, right? At a certain level, this energy of the sexual trauma or of the abuse, can become like a stagnant energy, right? That is held within the DNA, within the energetics, of that person, right? And that can be passed from one generation to the next, right? And that has the potential to animate, in the lives of different members of this lineage as those experiences, right? Either of sexual abuse or violence within intimate relationships. Yeah? Do you guys follow? Does it make sense? Let me know, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, when you look at your lineage, when you look at, I'm so glad. When you look at like the different generations, right? You can begin to see patterns, right? You can begin to see intimacy patterns, like I said, from mom and dad. Hi. Hi, Mwemeji. So good to see you here. You can begin to see patterns, of marriage within the lineage. Are the people in this lineage getting married? This is, one of those I'm deeply passionate about. You can also begin to see other patterns of absent parents, of absent fathers, of absent mothers, right? Might there be patterns of sexual abuse? Might there be patterns of violence within the relationships, right? And we're also speaking in this session, because it is generational trauma, we're speaking a lot about trauma, right? However, we don't want to lose sight of the potential of there being generational gifts as well, right? So in our inheritance as individuals, we inherit both the trauma and the gifts, right? So as you're mapping out and studying your lineage, right, you also want to look out for the gifts. What are the gifts that this group of people hold, right? They might hold the gift of entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial, right? They might hold the gift of industry, of trade, right? Of wisdom, of priesthood, right? It might be a family of priests and priestesses, of people who are spiritually gifted, right? I come from such a lineage on both ends, my mom and dad, right? It might be a lineage of people who are intellectually gifted, right? So you want to look at that, right? Such that as you're mapping out the trauma, right, you're also mapping out the gifts, right? Such that as you're doing your spiritual healing work to heal this trauma, you're also very aware of the gifts that you can lean into, to support, to build, to nourish your life, right? So please go do that, right? What are the things that your people are really good at, right? That they're known for, right? Awesome. And just continuing with the patterns as well. So this will add to the conversations that we've had in previous classes, right? So in one of our live classes, we're specifically looking at spiritual healing after a miscarriage or an abortion, right? And I did share with you guys that with this, really with all of, we really can't do spiritual healing work without also looking at what's happening within the genetics, within the generations, within the lineage, right? So so even with abortions, even with miscarriages, we want to see, like, if you're somebody who has moved through such experiences, we want to see if there might have been similar experiences for the women in your lineage, right? Because this might just be a generational trauma, right? Where women are not able to carry their babies to term, right? Maybe they miscarry, or there might be stillbirth as well, right? And we might, going deeper as well to see where this pattern might have started, right? Might there be women much further in the lineage, right, who maybe as a result of great violence within their relationships, they might have been driven to a point of terminating their own pregnancies, right? It could be something like that, right? Where it might have started with a grandmother somewhere who was in deep pain and cornered into this situation and having to make this decision that created an imprint for the lineage, for the women in this lineage, right? Who now find themselves not being able to carry to term, right? Or who now find themselves embodying this energy of terminating pregnancies in abortions, right? Yeah. So, like, this is like such interesting work, right? Such that whatever the experience you're having, right, we just want to sit down and see, might there be linkages, might there be any energetics from previous generations that inform your current experience, right? And even when we're speaking of womb pain, in the form of like heavy bleeding or excruciating menstrual cramps, right? We want to see, where is this pain coming from, right? Might some of it be coming from your current lifetime, or might some of it be informed by the experiences of the women before you, all right? Yeah, gentlemen, hang on. We're also going to get to the patterns for men as well, right? And there was also another class where we explored spiritual healing, for women who might be struggling to conceive, right? And I did mention that in that work, part of what we want to interrogate is, might there be women in your lineage who have struggled with fertility, who have also struggled with conception? Might this be a pattern active within your own lineage, right? And if yes, if it is a yes for all of these patterns, such that you're not the first one to experience this, we want to do the necessary, clearing and healing work, right? To diffuse and to transmute this pattern from your lineage and from your own energetics as an individual, right? Yeah. And so like that would be just like looking at you, mom, dad, grandparents, and great grandparents, right? And we can also go deeper, at the level of much older ancestors, right? Some of our ancestors lived through times of war. They lived through times of slavery, right? So for our ancestors who might have lived through times of war, war, we are talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, right? Such that whatever experience you might be having right now, we would want to do the deeper work, right? To see, could some of this anxiety be your own, or might it also be that you're carrying some of the anxiety of your people, of your ancestors, right, who experienced some of these very traumatic experiences, right? Yeah. And for the ancestors who would have lived through like times of slavery, right? We would want to look at relationships with money, relationships with wealth, your own sense of, worthiness, right? Because slavery goes hand in hand with like people being of servitude, right? And not being worthy of much. So we want to look at that. What is your relationship with your sense of worth, right? Might there be like a sense of being inferior, like an inferiority complex, right? Or might there also be like a struggle with being visible, So for those who might be entrepreneurs, right, would want to see, how does this show up in your business? How does this show up in instances where you have to be visible, where you have to speak up and sell your products and sell your services, right? Some of it might be flowing from some of these energetics, right? Which when we just look at the surface, we might not be aware of, but when we go deeper into the work, we might begin to see some of those patterns, all right? We've already spoken of sexual trauma, right? So you guys might be aware that in times of war, rape is used as a weapon of war, right? And so for some of us who our ancestors lived through times of war, there might be that imprint of sexual trauma already from that way back, right? That might be animating in your life as this specific trauma, right? Or whose pain might be held within your DNA, within your psyche, right? So when we speak of things such as womb pain, right, some of it, like womb pain such as, just pain within the womb, right? Some of it might be as a result of sexual trauma experienced by our ancestors, right? Even though we ourselves have not like sustained any trauma or wounding in the womb space, right? So we just want to, like, some of it, it's a mapping that you can do just by looking at the lineages, and part of it we would want to dive into the generational healing work, working with spirit, and see what patterns begin to emerge, right? We'd already spoken about, the betrayal that might have been experienced by our mothers, and maybe within polygamous marriages, that might lead to sisterhood wounds, that might lead to, a struggle in, or rather just strained relationships with the feminine or with other women, right? And speaking of betrayal as well, a betrayal wound can also be active for men, right? Where maybe there might have been a betrayal, maybe within the family, a specific family member feeling betrayed by other family members, which can just begin to strain relationships, within the lineage, right? And so in instances where we find ourselves in like extended family structures, where there might be a lack of trust, right? Or where relationships might be strained, we want to see, what might be the root of these strained relationships. And oh my God, like other, like often, I was thinking many words at once, right? So other two key patterns of trauma that you might notice in your study, in your mapping, or just generally, like across lineages, across generations. What's been coming up as very strong themes and patterns is one, patterns of alcohol abuse, right? And patterns of suicide as well. So these are generational traumas also to look at, where I know that we live in times where our excessive interactions with alcohol have become quite normalized, right? However, oftentimes this can be informed by an energetic within the lineage, right? where there is like a very active energy, that informs like this excessive consumption of alcohol, right? So you want to look at your lineage, right? How do members of your family interact with alcohol, right? Look at your cousins, look at members of your extended family, look at uncles, aunts, your grandmothers, your grandfathers. What was their experience with alcohol? Yeah. It's actually very normal to not drink alcohol, right? It's also okay to drink, right? But in instances where it's excessive, something similar to maybe sex addiction, right? So where there is what we can see is a wounded relationship with alcohol, right? Then begin just to map out the pattern, like look at what might be happening here, right? Yeah. So for example, for me, like such an excessive consumption and intake of alcohol is a pattern within my lineage on both sides, right? And yeah, luckily for me, because yeah, of all the spiritual work I've been doing, I've now been sober for about 4 years now, right? But I still do see it very active, for members of my extended family, right? Such that in instances of pain, right, instead of talking about the pain, people drown themselves in alcohol, right? When things are not going okay, they go to alcohol, right? So, yeah, just look out for those patterns, right? Suicide is also often it can animate as a pattern within the lineage, right? Yeah. And could have started some time ago with an ancestor who had whatever experience that ended or led to a suicide. That energy can become stuck within the lineage, right? And can move like from one generation to another, right? With members of the family taking their own lives, right? So just look at that, right? If you have had incidents of suicide in your lineage, just go sit down and look at what's been happening, right? Yeah. And so if this is an active pattern in your lineage, would want to do like some cleansing for that pattern, and also do inner healing work for you to clear that at a much deeper level. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And we've also spoken about vows, right? So these generational patterns, these generational traumas, what we consider generational curses, they might start as a vow or as an oath. So the example I gave earlier of a woman who is in deep pain and said out or to herself that I know my daughters will ever be with a man, right? Or a grandfather somewhere who is in deep pain and said, I know my sons will ever be with a woman. That thing, in the scope of healing work, those things are called vows, right? That can leave such a very charged imprint on your DNA, right? And whose memory becomes held within your cells, right? Yeah. And yeah, in the study of genetics and epigenetics, these things are passed down generations, right? Where you, as somebody in their mid-30s, you find yourself going like, me, no, I don't want no woman in my life, right? You might be conscious of it, or you might not be conscious of it. You might be saying, I got nothing, no use for a woman. Or you might just find yourself really struggling with intimate relationships and not knowing why, right? And so, yeah, we want to go deep in there and look at what's happening, right? Yeah. So, for me, like the areas in which I mostly help people, specifically around, intimacy, womb healing, womb medicine. Intimacy is part of womb medicine. That is why I speak a lot about intimacy, right? And in my in-person sessions, I've started to offer like psycho-spiritual healing. Psycho-spiritual healing is essentially, really for any challenge that you might be facing in your life, right? Whatever pattern that might be animating in your life, right? We can do like cleansing work for that, right? And set you off a new path in creating your life, right? Please let me know if you have any questions, right? Or if you're just joining us, we're almost right at the end. So once it ends, you can go. I'll save this video so you can rewatch it, right? Awesome. So now this will be part of your homework, right? Or just your, I don't know, personal work, right? Something that you can go work on and reflect on, right? So lastly, we want to intentionally interrogate the core patterns within your lineage, right? And so remember at the beginning, I did ask that you put together the 3 generations of your lineage, right? Starting with you, your parents, your grandparents, right? And so now in the study of the core patterns within your lineage, right? We want to look at your extended family structure, okay? And I want you to go reflect on what the biggest challenges or the biggest struggles are within your lineage, all right? So lineage, I'm talking about those 3 generational levels, right? And the extended structure of your family, including cousins, right? Your relatives, essentially, right? And I want you to go think about what are the things that your lineage tends to struggle with, right? Just when you look at you guys, right? Like what's happening there? What are some of the things that you struggle with, right? So the answer to this, right, will begin to answer the question of what you might be called to heal, right? Now, here's the thing. If you are hanging around these corners and you're listening to such conversations and attending such live classes, right, there might just be an invitation there for you by your soul, by spirit, etc. You might just be the one in your lineage who is called to do this work, right? And so please go think about it, right? Obviously, there will be things that you personally are struggling with in your own life, right? But often these things are not far removed from the struggles of the lineage, right? So just as an example, for me, as I've been mapping my own lineage, right? Like some of what has come up, I've already shared the matter of alcohol, right? Which fortunately, I've been able to, I've been sober for 4 years, so there has been some progress there. My only hope is that it'll continue to be the case, right? Because I have seen how, some of my family members have really, really struggled with alcohol, right? Where it's become normalized, right? That like it's as if everybody has to go through, it's as though alcohol is a rite of passage, right? Guys, that is not, it shouldn't be the norm. Like it's not normal, okay? I'm not saying you're wrong to drink, right? I'm talking about excessive consumption that could be likened to an addiction, right? And another pattern that I personally have identified within my own lineage has to do with money, right? And I think this would be like the general experience for most Africans, right? And so when we look at our history of colonialism and slavery as well, this has had such a huge impact on how we relate with money, how we relate with wealth, right? So you might find this as a pattern for you as well in your lineage, right? But specifically for me, there has been this like a very like prevalent like scarcity consciousness, right? Where we don't necessarily experience money and abundance, right? And even in cases, in instances where there might be a relative who we consider to be well off, like it's not at levels that I know we as humans are worthy of, you know? Yeah. So I know that part of my divine assignment in this lifetime is to heal around the energetics of money. All right? Yeah. And then lastly, what I have also identified in my own lineage, you know, as a wounded pattern, as a generational pattern, is of women not getting married, right? Yeah, so currently just in my extended family, there's only one woman who is married. One out of, yeah, there are more than, oh, two now, sorry. Yeah, it used to be one. There are two now. So we added two in April, which I greatly celebrated, right? So out of women who are like close to 20 or 30, right? Only two are married, right? And so for me, I have received that as a divine mission, divine assignment to heal that in my own life, this energetic within intimacy, within, you know, matters of union, right? To heal that for myself and as thus heal it for the lineage, right? Yes. So, yeah, I think that's it's been quite like some information, I suppose, to go process, right? And just to see how it speaks to your life, right? And to also just see what the invitation might be for you there, right? What might you be, what might be your own sacred invitation, your own divine assignment to heal for your own lineage, right? You know, even when we're considering, even when thinking of mental health, you know, issues such as, you know, depression or anxiety, we want to see, you know, might there be an energetic active within the lineage that informs this, right? Yeah. So often we are not the first ones to experience whatever trauma we're moving through in our lives, right? And genetics, our genetics, they hold so much information, right, about our gifts. Rather, they hold so much information about who we are and who we can be, right? Who we are would be informed by the past, would be informed by our ancestors, their experiences, etc., right? And who we can be would be informed by the potential to heal, right? And our own capacity to also lean into our ancestral gifts as well, right? Yeah. So please go, yeah, sit with the homework. I'm calling it homework that I've shared with you, you know, just to see what's happening in your own lineage, right? And what your own sacred and divine assignment might be, right? What you might be called to heal in your own life, what you might be called to heal for your lineage, etc., right? And if I can be of support to you, please don't hesitate to reach out, right? If this resonates for you and you're like, hey, I want to heal this or that, I do have like 2 offers for healing, right? I have once off healing sessions. Yeah, so a once-off healing session is just a 2-hour healing session that you can book, and we'll dive into the work. It being once-off means it can just be like the only one that you do, and that's it, right? So you can book your session at the link in my bio, right? So when you go to my bio, you'll see a link tree link, right? Just click on that, and one of the tabs within that will lead you to my calendar for the private 2-hour healing session, right? And we will dive into the work, like just see what's coming up for you, and also see what requires healing at this moment, right? And then I also have like a more long-term private healing program, right, for you who might want more than just one session, right? So this is a 6-month offer of us really diving into all of your life, right? Looking at all the patterns, within the mother line, within the father line, whatever it is that you might want to heal, or whatever it is that might be seeking attention right now in your life, whatever spirit wants us to attend to, right? And we'll dive into that work for the 6 months period, right? And yes, like I mentioned also, I have a new offer coming up, called is conception. It's a conception medicine program, right? And this is specifically for women who are struggling to conceive, right? And who want to do the spiritual healing work around that, right? So yeah, look out for that. And yes, like if any of it resonates, and if also anybody who might need what's been shared here today and all the opportunities for healing, please do share with your loved ones, or share with a friend who absolutely needs this, right? So yeah, that's about it for today. It's been a joy for me to to host this teaching series for you during this month of August. We've had like 4 sessions now. So the interesting thing, every time I offer such a teaching to you guys, something also shifts, transforms, and grows, evolves for me too. So they are as much a gift for me as they might be a gift for you. Just having you in the space and just journeying together, I too find parts of myself, that I might not have been aware of, before stepping into such a session. And yeah, like it's also like it's quite a privilege for me. I consider this work such a rare privilege, to be entrusted with such work, to be entrusted with the responsibility of holding space for people to heal and to change their lives. It's not something I take lightly. It's something that I consider a privilege, and that I'm grateful and honored to do. So please know that it's an absolute honor for me to journey with you in these ways, right? Yes. And yeah, the last one was that convening and communing with you in these ways helps to build like this body of work of psycho-spiritual healing and womb medicine that I'm engaged in. So I'm deeply grateful for your presence in these sessions. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for the value that you add, sometimes by just being present in this space. So that's something that I'm deeply, deeply grateful for, right? So as we conclude this teaching series for the month of August, right, I did share at the beginning of the session that there are two other things that I want to share with you. All right, so there will be two more sessions, right? One next week and the last one in the second week of September. And then after that, I want to return to podcasting. I want to dive into season 3 of the podcast, so you can anticipate that from then on. Teaching such as this one will be offered on the podcast. Okay, so it's been a joy, and I wish you a beautiful rest of the week until next week, right? Bye.